Hello guys, welcome to the machine learning mindset. In this tutorial, I am going to talk about Python functions. Technically, a Python function is some sort of a code, a block of code that we only run it when we need it, and without calling it, it won't be run. Let's just get started. So again, like before, we open Google Collaboratory as it gives you a nice Python interface, and we just call the file as functions. Let's just define a function. So the function syntax is like this: define my function, and for now we don't pass any argument to the function, but as later we will going to discuss it. And let's print high machine learning mindset. So if we run this cell of code, you would see that we don't get anything as the output because we just defined the function. We never called it. In order to call the function, we are going to put the name of the function and call it. So let's just do it this way. So it doesn't accept it because the myfunc by itself is the function object. If we use the empty parentheses, it's the proper way of calling a function. Now it should print for us. As you can see, defining and calling the functions are pretty easy. But let's go to the next step, which is the Python parameters. So what if we want to print something that is a variable? So let's again define the function, same as before. Let's eliminate this part. With the strings, you learn that we can just add some sort of string, which here we call it string phrase. So we can put this as the argument of the function there, but technically we call it a parameter. And now you will see if we run this again, the function would not output anything because the function that we define here, we're not calling it. Let's call the function. And now we are going to add something as the argument, assuming John. So the John is going to be the parameter of this function. So if you put that as you see, so the function got the parameter John and just print the outcome. So technically this is the way that we can just put an argument as the input of the function. There are different ways that we technically can basically implement a function and use different variables, but one of the most important things is that the function can take a value and return something. So now we just print. But what if we are going to do something else about it? So we can copy this. Instead of print, we are going to return specific thing, which is, for example, the string phrase. So this function simply take a string phrase as the input and return it as the output. But if we are going to work with the numbers for simplicity, let this function get a number and put this number to the power of 2. Or just add it with 1. So what we expecting here? So return, let me debug it. Yes, we can't use, no, let's use X. And and yes, we have to use an R here. Sorry, that was a typo error. Now you will see it's not doing anything as we just defined the function. Let's just return something. So my function, let's put a number like 2. Again, it just returned 3. Well, in a regular Python thing, if you're not using Google Collaborator, you wouldn't technically print this, because this my function is just a placeholder. We have to use the print, the output. So see, we input 2 and we got the output. The function simply got the parameter, added to 1 and return it. So this is the way that we usually work with the Pythons. There is one more thing here, as it is important to know that you need to have in mind when you're working with the functions. So assuming sometimes we don't know how many arguments do we have. How are you going to define the function? So we have to use a store and put something called args or names. So this tells us that this function is going to do something about it, and it just write the last name. For example, we may have many different names input, but we just want to say hi to the last person that we input the name. Let's just print it. Print my function. So let's add different John, David, Sarah. So if you're going to print this, as you can see, it just won't print hi Sarah, and the last element is, well, technically not, and it's just, as you can see, take the last element here and print it. So you would see it is a very simple way of using the keyword arguments when we don't know how many arguments do we have. Let's add another name, James. It just said hi James. In Google Collaborator, we technically do not need print function. If we just put that, it says, okay, yes, my function of that is going to return hi James. So this was a very simple Python syntax in terms of the functions that you may see frequently, and you need to know what that is. And technically, we just address that here with specific kind of examples. There are different kind of more complicated scenarios to cover this, but I just wanted to bring a very simple example for you to just understand it. So there are different things in the Python. One of the most important things is that can we have default values for the functions or not? So let's just define the same thing out there, and we have equal to John. So when in defining the function, we make a specific parameter equal to something, it says it is default parameter. So here, let's say you want to do this, and we print my function. So here, up there, assuming we define it like this, so we're expecting that to return hi John. Yes. And as it is returning hi John, it is clear that it takes the default parameters. So we didn't put anything as the input, so you should know that. But let's just eliminate John for a second to see what's going to happen. So here, if we print it, it gives us a syntax error because it says my function missing one required positional argument. So string phrase. Without something as the argument, the my function, calling my function will shoot an error because it definitely needs some sort of argument. But when we put something as the default, so it technically doesn't need any kind of things here. Let me just run it again. You see, hi John. So it's very important that you note this thing. But let's say for simplicity, I just omit the print. Let's say we just say my function James. You see what happened? It just print the James. Means when we input the argument, it just supersedes the default argument. So here, default argument has the parameter string phrase, which is equal to John. If we change it here, we customize it, so it's going to overwrite it. If we don't, it just go with the default parameter. It is one of the most important Python functions that you need to know, that it is of common use. All right, I believe that was it. I just covered the very basic stuff in Python function that you need to know to understand the body of a function. Hope you find it useful. Feel free to comment below if you had any questions. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe to stay tuned. See you later.